One of the most consistent complaints I've heard over the last couple of days since the Warzone update to the Black Ops 6 engine has been the game feels sluggish. And while I didn't initially feel it, and I'm still not feeling it sometimes, there were moments where I felt like I was attempting to do an action that was taking either too long to complete or I just wasn't getting it done in the time that I thought I was supposed to get it done. And sometimes I thought it was just me trying to adjust to Omni movement. But it turns out maybe we weren't so crazy after all. This comes to us by a tweet from Iceman Isaac. If you don't know him, he's a massive person inside the Call of Duty community who was part of the Call of Duty Next event, and he writes this over on his Twitter. The devs decided to remove all default perks in Warzone because they wanted it to feel one-to-one to multiplayer. This means no overkill, slower gun swaps, slower mantles, slower movement while plating and reloading, and more, unless you use a dedicated perk. Now, that alone already begins to tell me a little bit of why people are feeling a bit off, especially inside Warzone. Whenever you're dealing with multiplayer, the plating is obviously never going to be really that much of an issue unless you're playing HVT mode, and I don't know how many people are really a massive fan of that one. And then most of the time, the mantling and stuff like that is all going to get you killed anyways in multiplayer because it's just not something you have a lot to do of. Most of everything is held in lanes, and you're fighting pretty much toe-to-toe the majority of the time. If you're mantling inside of multiplayer, you're taking a huge risk, and you're generally going to get taken out while doing so. But whenever it comes down to Warzone, when half of the map's idea is parkour, you really have to be able to get over these things, through these things, and get into these fights a lot faster. But again, they decided that that wasn't something they wanted to do. What ended up happening is, you'll see it says, at COD Next, I pulled multiple devs aside and explicitly told them that removing default perks was a horrible decision. The community would overwhelmingly hate it and implored them to revert the change. They didn't. Which means, if you remember the quality of life changes that we had over the time, we got the, of course, again, faster movement while plating. We got the much faster mantle speed, the much faster climb speed, the less delay on going from hang to climb and climbing up and over. There was massive changes to the readiness of your weapon, the speed in which you were able to swap back and forth based on which weapon you were using, and when you were reloading, and all these things. All of that was a major quality of life change that we've dealt with through the time in Urzikstan. And realistically, that was the part that had finally made Warzone inside of Urzikstan feel good. Despite the overwhelming, I would say, blandness of the Urzikstan map. Again, the Urzikstan map is a good map, just very bland. It doesn't have very many unique POIs, very unique buildings that made it a overwhelmingly fun map. But what it did have was pretty good lanes. The fights were pretty decent. We could go into areas and we could actually have fights and you knew how it was going to work. Whereas against something like Al Mazrah, which had amazing point of interest and had decent lanes, and then all the way to the complete opposite side of it, which was Verdansk, which had amazing POIs with terrible lanes from point to point. So Urzikstan finally got into a good place once they gave us the ability to do all of those things that smoothed out combat. And then they've turned around and they have removed it again. And apparently a lot of quality of life things have been removed throughout this integration. And we're slowly just finding more and more of them as we go along. But ultimately, this is going to directly affect the way that almost every gunfight happens inside the game. And I started kind of realizing it and thinking that it was just the Omni movement that was the problem when I would get into gunfights. So I would go into a gunfight and I'd start firing, and I would get the first person down and realize I needed to plate. I would go to plate and I couldn't get away from these demons. And I was like, man, Omni movement has really changed the speed in which people are able to get to me in these gunfights. But that wasn't the case. It was the fact that we're no longer plating at full speed. We're no longer reloading at full speed. We're running into a lot of bugs right now. Mantles and sprinting resetting our reloads, meaning we were no longer able to reload while sprinting there for a while. And that's one of those things also that they've actually had to tweet out. They said, hey, by the way, if you don't know, reload while sprinting, mantle cancels reload and sprint cancels reload were turned on by default. This will be fixed later. That means if you have that on either controller or on keyboard and mouse, both of those need to be adjusted. You need to go back through and turn those off, so that way you don't accidentally cancel your reload every time you start to walk forward. These are some things that really shouldn't be running into the issue. If you remember, Urzikstan has been reset basically to day one Urzikstan. No pop-off change, no superstore, and there is no more bunkers or any of the bunker lines, any of that sort. So realistically, if you're looking at this game, it's most likely been Omni movement thrown over top of literally day one Urzikstan. So as you continue to play this game and you feel things that you think may be off or may be running different, keep that in mind. Leave a comment under my video. Let me know the things that are not feeling like they were previously. And maybe we'll just need to make a comprehensive video that we can send off to the devs about what things need to be changed back, what things need some buffing to work the way that they should. And most of all, I think one of the biggest things right now inside the game is, I don't know how it's feeling for you, but gunfights over range feel atrocious. It's starting to feel like it's taking 20 rounds to just down a person at range, and that's with all hit markers. And it's every gun. Almost every gun is almost an instant delete up close and feels like it takes forever over range. Now, obviously, I could be just adjusting again, but I honestly do believe that the damage drop-off ranges may be a little bit too harsh. We may need to push those out further. I'm going to leave sniper rifles alone because I know that they're in a terrible spot right now. But most of all, even ARs, LMGs, marksman rifles, all of the sorts, they are all feeling pretty weak over the mid-range, and it's kind of making it a bit rough to fight because you're just getting zerged by players. Like 3-4 players just eat a bunch of rounds, stem shot up close, and then just nuke you instantly with some of the SMGs. So obviously this is one of those things that we're going to have to go through. It's going to take some time for them to get these quality of life changes back into the game. Hopefully they will bring those quality of life changes back that Isaac's talking about, because that alone in these close quarter fights is going to dramatically change the way a lot of this game feels, and hopefully make it not feel, as everyone has been telling me, sluggish. This is just an update. I hope this finds you well, and if it does, hopefully at least it helps you understand you're not crazy. There is actually some things that are going on that need to be addressed, and we're hoping that they get addressed relatively soon. If you're looking for the best weapons to run inside of the season, I did an entire breakdown for the weapons right over here. You can go ahead and check it out. The only thing to note is the AEK just got patched today, so it's no longer full auto on the ground, so that won't be a thing. But the rest of the weapons I cover on things to look at and things that you might want to avoid. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, peace.